Nice to not see you all out there on the other end of the video. Not the normal meetings that we would have and presentations, but we adapt, we innovate, and that's what today's meeting is all about. Innovation, why NFP is investing in innovation and venture. And my name is Mark Rieder. I am head of innovation for NFP, and I'm joined today by my colleague, my peanut butter from my jelly, Shawn Ellis. Shawn, you want to give a little bit of introduction to everybody on yourself, your background, and then we'll dive in.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks everybody for the opportunity to be with you. As Mark noted, virtually is no substitute for the real thing, but glad we're getting together and sharing some of the great things that we're doing at NFP on the venture and innovation side. So my name's Shawn Ellis. I lead our venture investing efforts at NFP. I've been with the company for a bit over 3 years, joined to lead this function. In terms of my background, it's really a blend of operating experience in venture contexts. I spent a number of years building out and leading a venture incubated digital health company that sold into the brokerage channel. And prior to that, was involved in venture investing. So we're excited to be with you today and share some of the things that we feel are really moving the industry forward and showcasing the great things that NFP is doing for our accounts and our clients.
Awesome, thanks, Shawn. And my apologies first off for everybody. As you'll notice, I don't have a backdrop. I'm cool like Shawn's, but as anything, it's appropriate here that we're talking about technology, and mine was not working. So it was a little grainy, and I looked a little bit Max Headroom like, and that just separates the demographics of the people listening here. If you chuckle on that one, you'll know that you're older like myself and Shawn. And if you didn't, look them up, because Max Headroom was pretty cool back in the day. As Shawn mentioned, I just a little bit of background by myself. I've been with the organization 19 years, grew up on the employee benefits side, and have always had a focus on technology to enhance the value prop and to enhance what we were doing for our customers. And when we talk about where we sit today in our world and how we're addressing the needs of our customers and our business in general, we're really focused heavily on a digital transformation strategy and a journey. And today we're going to talk about how we're doing that through our innovation efforts and our venture efforts, and unpack, to start with, what it all means. And when we talk about innovation, I use the term in venture and digital, how does it all come together? And so I think it'd be great for us to just level set as to what we're talking about. It's kind of the path that we had to take internally, because when you think about innovation, the first thing people think about is technology. But innovation portion of it really isn't as much about the technology. It's more about thinking of how to be better and how to improve and implement and improve the results of the goods you're providing or the services you're providing. And I think, if you boil it down to that, everybody, regardless of what position you're sitting in within your organization or what kind of industry you're in, should be innovating. Now, when you think about innovation and digital transformation and how they play together, it really is the intersection of how we're going to think of new ideas and then apply technology to help solve for those ideas, to transform the business that we're doing on a day-to-day basis and move it from, we'll call it the paper-based world, to the digital data-based world. And heck knows that in our industry, the insurance industry, we've been a laggard in general. If you look at the insurance industry compared to the other industries that you might all work at, we're behind the times. But I do see significant movements in the space, and we're going to talk about our strategy and what we're doing to support those movements at NFP. We always talk about COVID, and there is not much good that has come from it. But the one thing I think from a silver lining perspective is that it really has kickstarted or accelerated the industry's roadmap of bringing technology into play. And I think you're going to see more and more advancements more quickly and more rapidly over the course of the next few years as a result of the pandemic, which has forced folks to adopt new technologies and a data strategy, as opposed to them looking back and leaning back on it being a nice to have, but not a mandate. So innovation to digital, and digital being the catalyst. Shawn, maybe you want to unpack a little bit about the venture capital and how that comes into play, just from a definitions perspective.
Sure, absolutely. I think venture is kind of entered the general lexicon for a lot of folks. Helpful for us to level set in terms of the way we think about venture capital and how do we address that as practitioners kind of every day. So definitionally, venture is an investment in which there's significant risk, typically related to a new and expanding business. And this is really an important point on a couple of fronts. So a lot of you are probably familiar with more typical investment or merger activity that your companies may be involved in. One of the important things to start, just in acknowledging the way we play with some of the companies that we support, is that we're investing a minority stake in those companies. NFP doesn't have a controlling stake in any of them. We're just excited about the value proposition that they can bring to the insurance market at large, or to specific risks that some of our clients may be facing. But this is kind of an important foundational definition. So if we then move forward to corporate venture capital and how we think about what falls within kind of the strike zone for us, corporate VC is defined as an investment that has an objective and a degree of connectivity to the operations of the investing company. So that's sort of the general definition. If we move to the next slide, we'll see the way we've defined that here. So we are trying to generate attractive returns, but really focusing on things that are outside of our core business, but closely related, ancillary to that business. And so our advantage lies in the unique ability to identify these opportunities, to accelerate these companies' momentum and de-risk them, not just for stakeholders from an ownership perspective, but for the customers of those ventures. And so really, we bring unique access to human capital, expertise, and our networks to help rapidly accelerate those products.
Awesome. Thanks, Shawn. We appreciate that. And we'll certainly get back with some of the thesis of our venture fund and where we're going and the opportunities that we've helped to facilitate and the opportunities that are ahead of us as we kind of peel through this deck. But before we do that, just to continue to level set and build some base information and base knowledge around innovation, technology, digital venture, we want to talk about some key market drivers that have really brought us to this point. I just spoke a little bit about COVID being an accelerator, but we have been on this journey now for 3-4 years, depending upon when you would claim us to have started. And the industry as a whole has been moving down the path as well. And so you could sit there and say, well, what was the driver for us starting to act in this fashion? And the first of it, we boil it down into 4 drivers, and there's certainly we could whiteboard a ton more. But the first is availability of data. The last 2 years alone, they state, and this was actually I think IBM quoted this like 8 years ago, that at that time, looking back 2 years, that 90% of the world's data had been created in the prior 2 years, then from the beginning of time. It's mind-blowing to think that way. But when you start to peel back a little bit further and you think about the advancements of technology over the course of the last several years compared to what it had been in centuries before, you can start to understand. And that growth of technology primarily is within the Internet of Things, connected devices. From the minute you wake up until the minute you go to bed, everything in between, you're connected. So your phone, your computer, your car. When we were traveling via airplanes, the airplane, and we're starting to get back to that a little bit, which is awesome. Every minute you're connected. Now we all have devices. And I think if you looked at yourself right now, just sitting at your desk, you probably have 3 connected devices at your fingertips today. You might have Fitbit, a phone, iPhone, and now your computer. And so that just means that, data is more available and the technology is not slowing down. Kurzweil, I think it was Ray Kurzweil, is a computer scientist, and he had a theory around the accelerating growth of technology. And that theory stated that in the 21st century, we won't experience 100 years worth of advancements in technology, but rather what would be more feel like.
I found this on the web for around the Excel.
Now I wanted to tell you that was planned to show you technology, but that's the problem. See, Siri's always connected, and all of a sudden she was listening to me. So I apologize there. But as we get back to Kurzweil, 20,000 years worth of advancements in technology in the 100 years in the 21st century, and that's only going to continue. So more technology, more opportunity, more data. That coupled with the fact that the internet of
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, hopefully our audience understands. Again, that was Siri somehow picking up my voice. The rise of APIs. And when I talk about APIs, and I have these conferences a bit, a lot of folks say, well, don't get all techie on us. You don't need to be techie to understand what an API is. You're probably experiencing today when you're shopping on Amazon, if you've shopped on Amazon. And it's the ability for systems and computers to talk together and to share data in a real-time fashion so as to be able to bring products, services to the table at the right place at the right time. And that information and that type of technology had not previously been in the healthcare and the insurance space, but it is moving into the space in a rapid fashion. And because of that, then all the data that's available and the technology tools that are out there helping you to acquire that data are all being able to be connected. And they talk about data being by itself being worthless. They're being able to be connected to gather information and to drive information. And that information helps to drive personalization. And that personalization is what we are all familiar with in our individual lives when we shop online for groceries or for food. It just hadn't been previously a part of healthcare and insurance. And I think we're going to start to see that change. That's one of the drivers that we see changing. And it's evident by some new players in the market. So you see Google, Amazon, Walmart, the various players that historically had not been in insurance are now, kind of dipping their toes in, primarily because they have access to data. They have access to be able to personalize care. And the insurance industry as a whole leading up to this has been a pretty bad user experience, and they are all driven off of user experience. So we see that these are the four drivers that have really, I would say, pushed us down this path and accelerated our roadmap to innovate and to transform our business. Shawn, maybe you can unpack a little bit about the drivers outside of just business, but now we move into venture where we see opportunity there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started our venture efforts a bit over 3 years ago. And really that was rooted on the work that we were doing for our clients to begin with. So all of that innovation that Mark alluded to in his prior comments, that's the type of research and vetting that our teams at NFP were doing just because of the proliferation of innovation and the solutions that we're either approaching, our teams at NFP or our accounts and our clients directly. So NFP decided, if we're vetting these solutions and looking for things that are truly innovative, we've got a unique ability to really partner with those firms and our clients so that we can affect the best solution and bring the best solutions to the table for our clients. So that was really the genesis of the venture effort in 2018. We started with just shy of $30 million, so pretty modest sum of money by corporate venture capital standards. And based on initial success, expanded that fund last year. Because of the success of the funds and the positive response that we've gotten, not only from NFP employees and our clients and accounts, but also our trading partners, we're now raising a fund too, and we are accepting capital from outside entities. It's important to note in that first fund, it was strictly money from NFP. We wanted to demonstrate that we could do this effectively and convey value to our clients in doing so. And we're confident that we've demonstrated that.
Awesome. And Shawn started to give a little bit of history there, and I wanted to do that for our audience as well. I alluded to some of this in my previous comments, but just to kind of give a little bit more information dating back to how we started our efforts. And it really began in early 18. We launched a venture fund, as Shawn mentioned, but alongside of that and running parallel to that was our innovation lab. In our innovation lab, we thought it was really important that we started to understand more about the industry, the technologies that were coming into play, the players that were out in the space, and how that technology and what one and many would have called disruptors, we'll call them enhancers, were coming and going to be able to improve our value prop, what we could do for customers and how we performed for our customers. And so we put a conscious effort. So much so, we built a division of the company that was focused on, becoming a scholar in the space, and then taking that information, aggregating and educating our customers, as well as our own team members, as to what was coming down the pipe. At the time, to be honest with you, I don't think many of our customers, nor were we ready to bring all the solutions to the table. But the first piece of being successful was understanding what exists in the market. We then moved into 2019 and spent a lot of time focused on educating and asking a lot of questions, educating our offices and our customers that in order to effectively innovate, it required an ecosystem of partners. It required the startup community that we've been researching for the last the last year, but it also required the buy-in from our clients and the cooperation from our account teams and our people within the organization to look to tackle problems together and to innovate and to be better about how we were addressing needs of our clients and ultimately their employees. And so we spent a good amount of 19 focused in on that. All of that came to culmination in the beginning of 2020, where we put our digital transformation strategy in play so that we could take advantage of the tools, because it was evident to us that the drivers for what was happening in the insurtech space was data. And if we did not properly organize our organization and our interaction with our customers around data, we wouldn't be able to take advantage of the new solutions and the enhancements that were coming to market. So we've been on that journey now, and we will continue on that journey. We don't see this as being a project that ever ends. It's an ever evolving program. And I'm going to talk on the next few slides about what it is that we've been executing on and some of the things that over the course of the next year or two, you'll start to see as enhancements to the value prop that our teams are bringing to you, our customers. Let's click through. One of the things that we're doing is we've created a platform called NFP Connect. And NFP Connect is the platform that is supporting our digital transformation. And it's built on the philosophy of aggregating information that we're managing on behalf of our customers and using that information to help drive actionable insights to ultimately lead to better outcomes with their employees and ultimately with their programs that we're managing on their behalf. It is a platform and a strategy that supports every one of our business lines. So it's not exclusive to benefits. It's benefits, property and casualty, and individual insurance. And it has and interacts with the entire ecosystem from an audience perspective, our account teams, our corporate customers, and their employees. And it's focused on not just service, but a new way of selling or interacting and gathering data in a digital fashion. I'm going to unpack a little bit about the interaction with the corporate account client as well as our account team, and give some examples of where we're going with this journey. Some of you may have already experienced some of this. Last year, one of our first initiatives or problems we solved for was virtual open enrollment. It was a challenge for us to get out in front of our clients and in front of our clients' employees to execute at a very important time of the year. And so we needed to use a platform that allowed us to digitally engage. And we thus brought into play virtual open enrollment landing pages, which were a result of the NFP Connect platform. But to talk a little bit more about NFP Connect and the value it's going to bring to the table, I would focus mostly on aggregation of data and aggregation of information. As I mentioned before, the technology space is moving at a feverish pitch. more and more solutions are coming to the table, and we need to be able to bring those solutions to you, our customers, so that you can take advantage of gathering information, understanding your risks, and mitigating your risks. If that's not brought all together and the walls of these point solutions aren't broken down, it becomes more and more difficult. So the aggregation of information is really important. It starts off first with analyzing the demographics of your population and helping you understand what your population looks like and the appropriate programs that should be brought to the table to support the demographics you're serving. We now are sitting in a time when there's 4 or 5 demographics within our workplace. How do we craft plans that meet the needs of all those individuals? And the first thing is to look and identify who those individuals are. The second thing is taking claims information that we're managing on your behalf, again, and or loss run information, depending upon the business and the vernacular that's used, bringing that into play and helping you analyze that in a dynamic fashion, not on paper, not in PDFs, but dynamically through our portals. To have the interaction with a Power BI application that allows you, the client, to drill into the data in conjunction with us. It's your data, we want you to have access to it. And the third piece is the API information, and it's now taking that same information and bringing in third-party information, whether it be COVID data that we executed on last year with some reporting that we did to help analyze potential impact of COVID on claims, or it happens to be carrier rating information or weather data or crime data. We spoke about APIs earlier, and the beauty of the world that we live in today is data is never more available than it's ever been, and we can bring that into crafting strategies for you. Insurance is about risk management, and risk management is enhanced by data. We then are taking that information and believe that we need to share that with you 365, 24/7 in a visual, dynamic fashion. So what you will start to see rolled out over time within our markets and our business segments is the client access to NFP Connect, not just us accessing and gathering data on your behalf internally, but us turning that over to you as a client. Obviously, depending upon your size, you'll have different access to data points depending upon your funding strategy. But the point here is to be able to have one point of entry, aggregating data, aggregating systems, and providing you and our account teams a better user experience. Because if we drive that user experience, then adoption becomes more. And the more adoption we have, the more data we gather, the more data we're able to gather, the better decisions we can help you make as an organization. And again, this is spanning across all of our different business lines. So gathering data from health insurance, property and casualty, retirement planning, all coming in to help you run your business more effectively in a holistic fashion. We're also, I mentioned service and sales, service being the claims, sales being the opportunity for us to engage digitally. We know that the buyer is interested in having a better user experience. We know that the workforce is growing from a gig economy perspective. We understand that folks are expanding on their platforms. I mentioned about Google and I mentioned about Walmart, and you hear stories about Amazon all getting into this space. And we know there's generational differences. So what we've been able to do is start to work towards building a better channel for interacting with individuals, whether those individuals are employees, gig workers, small business owners, or even large business owners, and allowing them to use NFP Connect to access markets that they previously and products that were previously accessed simply through paper exchange and a standard RFP process. Mobile is certainly important. So the ability for us to push information out to you, not only desktop, but also in a mobile environment, again, focused on user experience, focused on digitization, focused on elimination of paper. All of these things, I think, segue nicely into venture and our ability to partner with companies that allow us to access that data to drive better results. And we're going to pass the baton over to Shawn to opine on the NFP venture value prop. But again, if I take a step back and we want to transition in, we're identifying solutions and point solutions that we can be impactful for helping to mitigate risk for our clients and drive strategy. And where we can and where there's an opportunity for us to bring even more value to the table is when we start to talk about not only an innovation relationship, but also a potential venture relationship. Shawn?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Great segue. So let's jump to the next slide. So this is a bit more detail. This is a bit of a double click in terms of the expertise that we bring that both Mark and I alluded to earlier. So number one, just because of the roughly 6,000 employees that NFP has focused on the employee benefits, property and casualty, and retirement spaces, we've got a unique vantage point to see new innovations the minute that they're hitting the market. So as we're seeing that, we're evaluating those opportunities in mass. Just to give you a sense, typically for every investment that we make at NFP Ventures, we're talking to, on the roughly 300 companies for every one investment that we may end up making. So gives you a great sense of the scale of opportunities that we're seeing and how selective we're being as we deploy capital. Next is we're analyzing these opportunities. There's really a unique ability to tap into the diverse expertise that NFP has across not only NFP, but our broader network of relationships. And that results in kind of better outcomes and ability to really understand companies before we're bringing them to the table and even considering investment. Then after we invest in these companies, there's an ability to support those companies, helping them to refine aspects of their business model in a way that really ends up conveying more value to our customers and allows us to bring these solutions when they make sense for our customers to market. And I really want to emphasize that point about when it makes sense for the customer. So one of the important foundational beliefs within NFP Ventures is that nothing we invest in is a one-size-fits-all for our accounts. Everything that Mark just described in those prior slides about our ability to aggregate data and drive analytics, that's really informing how we can bring solutions that are highly value add in a targeted manner to the accounts where it makes sense. So just really want to emphasize that point. And then we're also able to help these companies accelerate their business faster than they otherwise could. And that's important because, again, as we think back to that original definition of venture, these are early opportunities that do have risk. And as we're bringing solutions to the table for our clients, we want to make sure that they're getting better and better and that those companies are going to be in a position of strength down the line. NFP's expertise and network of relationships really ensure that that's the case. We can bend the risk curve for these companies as well as our clients. In terms of where we play within the venture space, again, no surprise, this closely mirrors NFP's business lines and the expertise that NFP brings to the table. So broadly, we look at opportunities in and around health tech and benefits, the insurtech space, which generally aligns with our property and casualty business, and fintech, which aligns with our individual solutions, retirement, and RIA businesses. We focus on those markets not only because NFP has expertise there, but because each of them are large markets and growing quite rapidly. So those are attractive dynamics that are really fertile for innovation to thrive. Then within those markets, we focus on specific investment themes. Within those investment themes, a point that I really want to drive home is that we're looking for transformational solutions. So perhaps defining this in the negative, telemedicine is a solution that's been incredibly helpful for everyone, given the changes that COVID's brought to the market over the last year. I don't think anyone would doubt that telemedicine, virtual mental health, these types of solutions have played an integral role in our healthcare system as that system has faced very rapid change. But from an NFP Ventures vantage point, there are a number of solutions out there within the telemedicine space or virtual care space that we would view as incredibly beneficial, but not necessarily differentiated or revolutionary. And as a result, we're not making investments in those types of companies. A better example would be within the digestive health space. We made it an investment in a company called Levante Health. First of all, as we were researching that space, we were able to draw on the RX expertise of some of our consultants within our employer benefits practice. And we were able to see that RX spend trend associated with digestive health issues was one of the leading drivers of RX costs for a broad spectrum of our clients. And so as a result, we started focusing in on that space, got to know Vivante as a solution. Ultimately, we're comfortable with investing. And in instances where we see indications that clients would benefit from a solution like Vivante, have introduced that solution to them. So that's just one anecdote of the way we've kind of leveraged the expertise within these spheres and how we bring those solutions to our customers. So we convey an immense amount of value to these companies, both internally and externally. So again, we've spoken about the fertile, excuse me, the fertile ecosystems that we play in, the market intelligence that we bring, the expedited access, and really the global insights that NFP is able to convey. Externally, we also have a number of levers that we can pull to help these companies. We have broad insurance access and terrific relationships with insurance markets. We have a unique platform in NFP Connect that we are developing, which allows us to bring customized solutions to our customers. And then last, we have, because of these relationships, an ability to access perspectives on an expedited basis, to move quickly and find our way into deals that often are very competitive. So wanted to give you a more comprehensive view of our portfolio today and a sense of some of those things that we really have viewed as transformational. So these are the companies sort of aligned with the verticals within NFP's lines of business. So Vivante Health in the upper left is the company that I spoke of that relates to digestive care. You know, I'll just highlight a couple of examples throughout. Kindbody is a company that we invested in that's revolutionizing women's health and their healthcare experience with an initial focus on fertility and reproductive health. One of the things that we found was very differentiated in Kindbody's experience is that they were actually administering care in a center of excellence context. So unlike other fertility solutions that we had seen, they were actually controlling the experience and ensuring that it was an exceptional experience for their patients. And in controlling that experience, they were also able to drive deeper discounting and cost reductions in fertility care. We really found their model to be unique and quite differentiated in market. Within InsurTech, there are a host of investments that we've made spanning quantification of cyber risk, which Axio provides, to automated insurance verification, which is the solution that TrustLayers brought to market. And then finally, within FinTech, we're really thinking critically about how we can deliver a personalized financial experience that people would come to expect in a direct-to-consumer context, but through a group or employer benefit distribution channel. So really drawing on Mark's comments earlier about personalization, that's a driving theme across the FinTech investments that we've made. Another important point to us from a venture perspective is that our leadership teams that we're investing in and working closely with are representative of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's worth noting that in the venture industry, which rightly has been criticized for a lack of focus on DEI historically, over half of our companies have leadership that include minority, female leaders, or LGBTQ leadership.
So I want to pause here for a minute and certainly have some things here I'd like to chat with Shawn about and to dig in. We're going to go off the cuff with some conversation here as we can. But I also want to throw out to the audience any questions you might have. There is a Q&A section on your CVent application. It'll allow you to submit a question, and they'll be routed over to us, and we'll be able to go off the cuff answering any questions you have around digital, innovation, venture, investment, weather in Chicago and Austin, which is where I'm based. Any of those questions are on the table. Yes, sir.
Or any questions that can be posed to Siri. We can continue to demonstrate Mark's special relationship with technology.
I gotta be honest with you, that was pretty funny. I couldn't have planned that anyway. But the second time it became annoying. One of the things I want to point out to the audience, while maybe we're playing the Jeopardy theme song and they're coming up with some questions, is the fact that, as a fund and the concept around it, our NFP Connect platform is to be able to bring solutions to the table that meet the needs of our customers, and there are many. Through our lab, we've sourced 500 plus different organizations over the course of the last 3 years. And we've, as you just saw from Shawn's presentation, invested in 20 or so. 20, what's the number now? 23, Shawn? So I want to make sure that everybody is aware of although there is a lot of strategic alignment between what we're doing as an organization and our venture fund, it's certainly one does not exist for the other. We do believe that investments in companies where we see differentiation can really help all tides rise. And if we can be a part of that, then fantastic. But we're also committed to finding the right solution for the right need of our customer. And that's evident by the partnerships that we are bringing to the table and now organizing through our NFP Connect platform. I would tell everybody in the audience, as they're looking to innovate within their organization potentially, or looking to innovate within their strategies, one of the things that we've found to be successful that has not only helped with adoption internally, but has really brought the most value to our customers is solving for problems. So if you boil it down, you're going to hear a lot of companies talk about AI, machine learning, natural language processing, APIs, SDKs. There's a ton of acronyms out there that can kind of allow you to kind of lose your mind thinking and hearing. We boil it down to solving problems. Show me a problem that exists today with either the way that you're operating or the way you're communicating with your employees or the challenges that are existing in the world in general or specifically within your organization. And I believe you'll find a solution that exists in the market. And the simplest of problems, we're finding the most robust tools that are solving for them. Shawn, but as I kind of click on the chat here and think about it, when you look from an investment perspective, is that core to it? Find a big problem is the ones that you're really excited about, where it's a problem that exists that you can boil down into layman's terms and not be confused, and that's going to set the stage for potentially a good opportunity. Does that fall in line with you?
Yeah. No, absolutely, Mark. That's one of the foundational criteria for us to consider a market at large. I mean, typically you can think of our process as zooming in from 30,000 feet on a particular problem, disease state, indication, et cetera. And so, you want to ensure you have a large market. Again, going back to the digestive health example, that is a market that is twice the size of the diabetes market as an end market. So, that it's large, a lot of folks are suffering. Then the next dimension is, what is the experience? So I think this is really where your earlier comments about, Amazon, Google, some of the tech companies that are sitting on the largest data stores and also creating the best customer experiences. That's a dimension that we're also thinking critically about because we know these solutions can't deliver impact if they aren't designed in a consumer-centric way and folks aren't using them as an end consumer. So those are a couple of the kind of layers of consideration that we think through as we're looking at investment opportunities.
Awesome, and that kind of parlays into a question that came in about APIs. and how, they feel that that is something that can help revolutionize our industry. Yet you see a lot of folks caught up in EDI files for exchanging, eligibility and transmission. I don't know what your opinion on it, but you referenced Google, and I think their data set and their ability to share data and push data is going to allow them to execute quite a bit. I will say that for the folks in the audience, we are still dealing with legacy systems at a number of different of our core partners. So the insurance industry, a lot of it's focused around insurance carriers, and whereas we love them and they help us to facilitate the business, they all aren't moving at the same pace around digital transformation. But I do think that there is hope. We hear in a lot of our conversations with I'll call it innovation units within various insurance companies that they have identified the problem. They understand that their legacy systems can't react, and many of them are building layers on top of their legacy systems in order to allow for open access to data. I recently had a conversation with one of your largest, agency management systems that exist in the industry, and they talked about how they've come to realize that they can no longer hold the data, and they need to be more of a data exchange organization than a data management organization, which was music to my ears and really should speak to volumes to where the industry has gone in such a short period of time. I'm assuming in part you are focused on the value prop and of the programs that are coming to the table, Shawn, and their ability to access data. If it's something where they're guaranteeing that they're going to get API connected with carriers, you might say our industry expertise has shown that might be a challenge, and that kind of comes in. Those conversations probably are part of what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think data interoperability and data integrity, higher data integrity, are two really important trends that drive a lot of our investment themes, especially within the P&C context. Just because, as you noted earlier, Mark, our industry has been challenged because they're dealing with, legacy systems and significant investments that a lot of carriers have made as trading partners. So it's really exciting, and what we've seen in the last 2 years is just, a willingness and openness and starting to see, kind of strong appetite on the part of the carriers to provide more open access via API. And that's got positive benefits for our teams at NFP as their workflows are being streamlined, and for our customers, right? Because the interface with NFP in a brokerage capacity is being streamlined for the customer as well. So, those introductions of innovation are great. Just everyone at the table seems to benefit.
Awesome. So the question that came in about the NFP Connect platform and our ability to link systems. So core to the thesis of NFP Connect is not only the aggregation of data, but we'll call it frictionless access for our customers out to the tools that we're bringing to the table to help them manage the risk. Part of that is within the platform providing quick and easy access to their vendors. We are actively working to connect with them via SSO. The stages that we work with is quick hyperlinks, then SSO, then API, depending upon how critical the data is to access real time into the database. So for the question there around SSO, we 100% agree that is an important component. First, aggregate the systems. Second, provide easier frictionless access out into the systems. We want there to be an experience where, although NFP Connect natively is never going to answer for all the questions based on the InsurTech solutions that are coming to market at a feverish pace, it is the starting point, and it'll allow you to easily navigate as opposed to having to remember 15 different URLs to go out and access your Ben admin system, your payroll system, your third-party TPA for flexible spending account administration, your diabetic management tool, the list goes on, and we need to do a better job of organizing that, and with NFP Connect, we are. In addition to that, just easier way for us to communicate. So chat features, email features, easy access to your documents and your resources. One of the things we didn't get into Granularly is the Vault, which is a component of Connect, which will allow you 365, 24/7 access to your plan designs and your documents and your presentations and your claims reports. Something that we, again, might not have felt as critical prior to COVID. And I think everybody realizes now the ability to have access to information wherever and whenever you need it is super important. I have another question that's come in here defining SSO. Somebody said, can speak, get out of the acronyms and give us a little bit. That's single sign-on. So single sign-on would be you're coming into one environment and you're being taken out to the third-party tool, and you don't have to remember that password because there's authentication between the two systems talking to say that they know who you are. So apologies for using all the insurance terms. I start get going and you start utilizing these acronyms, and you think that everybody understands them, but you know, it's not always the case. Well, hey, listen, we are coming up on the end of our time here, and it was certainly a pleasure speaking with you, Shawn. For those of you that don't know, as much as it sounds like we are super connected, our worlds are busy on its own, and it's not too often that we get to come together and share thoughts. It's always good though that those thoughts and our brains are in alignment, because it means there's some validation. Either we're both crazy or we're validating and each other as to what we're doing and helping to change an industry that requires a little bit of change and a little bit of push to get there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark, for the chance to chat with you about this. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, just as a last note, as you're thinking through the things we spoke about, if there's things that would help you from an employer perspective in managing your business, although we have a path of transformation that we're following, it's going to be made better off of feedback coming in from our clients. What would help them execute on their jobs easier? What would create a better user experience? We've created a baseline, but to really make a product and a tool and a platform that's impactful, it requires that ecosystem I spoke about earlier, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please, you know, facilitate them through your account team, and it would really be helpful. We'd love the engagement. Thank you, everybody.
Just a reminder, you all have the ability to enjoy a lunch break, visit the exhibitor booth, get yourself some points, check out some of our speakers, download content. You might want to check what's going on in your world before you tune in to the afternoon sessions, which begin at 12 o'clock Central. Thanks to all of our speakers, and we'll see you again very soon.